The Rainbow Book Club, Project Managers Port Harcourt World Book Capital 2014, invites you to the January 2025 edition of Talking Books Africa, our monthly virtual live conversation with authors. Join us on Saturday, 25th of January, 6 to 7 p.m. for an interview with Nimi Akinkugbe of Money Matters with Nimi and Nigeria's former ambassador to Greece. We'll be discussing her book A to Z of Personal Finances, which contains practical personal finance tips. Get a copy of this book, read it, and connect with us live on our social media platforms for the interview as we bring Africa's stories to the world. Rainbow Book Club, spreading the joy of reading since 2005.
Welcome. Good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you're joining us from today. Hello, everyone. Happy New Year. If you are joining, please let us know where you're joining from. We would love to know where you're joining us from today for this amazing edition. It's the first of the year 2025, and I would like to wish you all a happy new year once again. So please feel free, if you're joining us on any of the platforms, to just drop a happy new year message in the comments. We'll be glad to read from you. And you could tell us what you're looking forward to this year, 2025. We hope you did have a great holiday, and we're looking forward to an incredible year with you on Talking Books Africa. My name is Nimi Akinkugbe, and I'm welcoming you again to 2025. We have quite a number of interesting books lined up for you this year with some authors, and we're glad that you could join us today. We have, as you know, another interesting guest. We're going to be having some very insightful conversations today. So once again, if you are joining and you have a friend or family member who you think needs to be part of this conversation, please send the link to them. Please share across other platforms and encourage your friends to join us. It's the January edition, 2005, of our Rainbow Book Club's Talking Books Africa. It's a monthly virtual live conversation that we have with authors, African authors, and other authors who are telling African stories through the lens of Africans. It's brought to you by the Rainbow Book Club. The Rainbow Book Club was founded in 2005 and has been, since then, the foremost promoter of reading in Nigeria. The Rainbow Book Club are project managers for the Port Harcourt UNESCO World Book Capital in 2014, also the Port Harcourt Book Festival. Project managers also for Get Nigeria Reading Again campaign, as well as Africa 39. In 20 years, the Rainbow Book Club has set up over 200 book clubs, established over 6 libraries, run a vibrant book festival for over 7 years, and also published over 9 books. This edition and other editions are proudly brought to you by the Rainbow Book Club. And as some of you may see, we will hear from her much later. We are glad to have the founder of the Rainbow Book Club joining us today, Mrs. Coco Kalango. And she's also director of the Port Harcourt UNESCO World Book Capital 2014. So tighten your seatbelts, ladies and gentlemen, as we welcome you to another edition. And I will be introducing today the book that we're going to be discussing about. And that book is the A to Z, Personal Finance. Whether you are just starting out and in your first job, or you're approaching retirement, or you're somewhere between, well, somewhere in between, I beg your pardon, you need to pay close attention to your personal finances, especially now. In A to Z of Personal Finance, the author that we will be speaking with today, Nimi Akinkugbe, with a professional career spanning over 2 decades in banking and private wealth management, provides you in this book with important practical information and useful tips on matters concerning you and your money. What a time to be talking about money, especially coming out of the festive season, all right? I'm sure some of you are nodding. Okay, it's the first month of the year. A lot of people are beginning to think about their finances, and so this is very apt. So get your pens, get your notepads together. We will be going straight into the conversation. It's my pleasure, ladies and gentlemen, to introduce to you our author for today. She's none other than Nimi Akinkugbe. Nimi Akinkugbe's journey is a unique blend of banking, entrepreneurship, and public service, where she served as Nigeria's ambassador to Greece from 2021 to 2023. She enjoyed a successful 23-year career in banking, including roles as general manager at Stanbic IBTC Bank and regional director, West Africa, for Barclays Bank. In 2012, she founded Best Man Games Limited, launching the first African city edition of Monopoly, the Lagos edition. Some of you know that game. She holds a BSc in Economics and International Relations from the London School of Economics, and she has an MBA from the Lagos Business School. She enjoys orchid gardening, boating, playing the piano, and traveling. She's going to be interviewed today by the delectable. We have some of you who are familiar with our sessions will know that we have Tarari, who did a lot of the interviews last year. But today, we have another wonderful interviewer, a lady called Dabi Olu-Odugbemi. Dabi is a lover of books and a budding writer. She's also a private equity lawyer. She achieved a first-class degree, law degree, from Cambridge University. She's joining us today from London, where she lives and works. She's going to be taking the conversation through with our guest author this afternoon, evening, depending on where you're joining us from. So once again, as I hand you over to our interviewer for today, Dabi, I want to welcome you again to this special edition. Dabi, it's good to see you.
Nice to see you as well.
Take the conversation away.
Thank you so much. And thank you, everyone. Good evening and welcome from wherever you are, whatever time zone. I'm so looking forward to this conversation. I have been literally on the edge of my seat to speak to Mrs. Akinkugbe since I found out that I was going to be doing this. And I have my copy, my virtual copy of the book right here. I think for me, and I'm sure for many in our audience, starting off the new year is a really important time to think about your habits, your systems, your processes. And for me, I really like to reflect, how am I going with my finances, my career, my relationships, my hobbies, etc. And I think if you are someone who is in that place right now, especially if you're thinking about finances and what you need to be doing to elevate yourself, the A to Z of personal finance is definitely one to pick up. So I'm really looking forward to our conversation today, Ms. Akinkugbe. I have a bunch of questions for you, as you know. And so I think we'll just start out with kind of the initial one that probably everyone is thinking, why did you decide to write this book? Obviously, it takes a lot of knowledge and effort to write a book. So was there a specific moment that pushed you to write this? And relatedly, why did you decide to call it the A to Z of personal finance?
Hello, Gabby. Dabi or Gabby?
Dabi.
Dabi. Okay. Hello, and hello, everyone. And thanks for making the time out to be here. And thank you for inviting me, Coco. It's just great to be here. And as you said, it's so timely. We're all broke after dirty December, especially if you're in Nigeria. So it's a good time to start sort of looking at your finances all over again. Now, why did I write this book? I was a banker for 23 years. And over that time, I saw the way people behave with money. And I saw some great success stories and I saw some disasters. For example, someone who just did not believe in insurance. And then very good at saving and investing, but a nasty illness did come and literally wiped out decades of saving and investing just because he just did not believe in insurance. I saw families with significant wealth spoil their kids totally, making the children totally incapable of earning or doing anything constructive with their own lives. So one generation made the money, the other generation spent it, and by the third generation, there was nothing left. And when there was no will or any estate plan, you had a family feud. I saw a lot of this and started writing articles in the dailies, some of the leading papers. I had a weekly column, had a radio show, just trying to educate the public about, what they should be doing. Unfortunately, personal financial literacy is not in the school curriculum. So we all go through life and make these mistakes. If only we had learned a bit about money while we were in school. We're working on that now. So in Lagos, for example, we're putting in financial literacy school clubs as an extracurricular activity. We've done about 100 schools now. So children come out of school at least having a basic knowledge about money matters. And then I literally just compiled those articles, thousands of articles, found my favorite ones and put them all together as an A to Z. A to Z, ABC, because money matters tend to be so complex. It's always, a lot of the times, talking above your head. Many people say they switch channels when the money matters come on TV because it's boring, it's just not, and a lot of the financial jargon is not what people understand. So this book tries to break things down into bite-sized pieces. So you could just think of B for budget, S for stocks. So you can just go to where you want and find what you want, read about that, and it sort of helps sort of put you through. So that's where it all came from.
That definitely makes sense. And obviously having read the book, I see that and completely agree. For anyone who hasn't had a chance yet, definitely do. As Mrs. Akinkugbe says, you can literally pick out a chapter that you want to find out about, let's say D for debt, and go there and learn like so much about that topic. So I think let's launch into one that is usually an interesting topic for lots of people, and it's runs through a lot of the book, and it's about kind of investing, making passive income, etc. For those in our audience who are coming because they're very curious about how to start investing or what that even looks like, could you talk a bit about, getting started on investing, first steps, and what advice you would give to anyone who is literally like, I have no clue and I just want an idea of where to start?
Yes, absolutely. Well, before you invest, you have to have been saving. A lot of times people are confusing saving and investing. Saving is for the short term and investing is for the long term. You're saving for what you need to spend in the next 1 to 3 years. School fees, you're going back to school, you've got rent to pay. You don't want that sort of money in an investment, which is a long-term play. So you don't want to put your children's school fees or your school fees in the stock market. You need that money to be easily accessible. I started investing in my late 20s, early 30s, and the first thing I did was mutual funds. Because I didn't have the time or the expertise to select my own stocks, I just found it was so much easier to have a professionally managed fund where there are people who do they have all the numbers, the analysis, and so much information, more than most of us would have. And they have picked a portfolio of stocks and they give you a wide variety. So there's stocks that are more risky or blue chip stocks or ethical stocks, there's so many different types of funds that you can invest in. That's a great way to start. So what I used to do was set aside a certain amount of money every single month by direct debit. It's called paying yourself first. When you wait for your salary at the end of the month before you think of investing, by the end of the month, there's nothing left. But if as your income comes in, you have a direct debit going to investments or savings, it's a surer way to make sure that you are doing something. So if the market is plummeting, you're buying more stocks. And if the market goes up, you're buying fewer stocks. On average, over the long term, you're getting quite good value for your money. So that's the best way to start. If you don't really understand the market, start with a fund. But then you should educate yourself. Some people do it very, very well. There's so much online about learning and what to do, and just follow the trends. And you can have people to hold your hand. And I think if you're young and you're interested, then you could do very, very well. Because naturally, the individual stocks, if you pick right, will do much better than the diversified portfolio, which is what the mutual funds are. So I think you could start with a fund, a balanced fund. It could be stocks, it could be bonds, it could be, just to think of what works for you. But before you start investing, one of the most important things is knowing your risk tolerance. Investing comes with risk. How much money are you prepared to lose? There's no guarantee in investing. So you do need to know, this money that I want to set aside, can I afford to lose it? How long can I afford to put it away for? If I can't put all my money in one basket. You've just got to be knowledgeable about how I used to panic if the stock market crashed. Instead of going out and buying more, sometimes I would sell and you just lose your money because you panicked. So just be very careful, get to know yourself, get to know your own investor personality. That's so, so important.
That makes a lot of sense, and I think is really valuable advice. I think my next question is kind of related to that, but one of the points you talk about in the book as well, really well, is the fact that there's so many different types of things you can invest in. We mentioned stocks now, you mentioned bonds as well, but I wanted to give a couple of scenarios and just see what your advice would be for people at different points. So, for example, what kind of advice would you give to someone who, let's say, has some savings right now, but is torn in the tussle between, should I, get on the property market and focus all my money and savings into buying a house, or should I be investing in stocks while I'm young and trying to take advantage of the fact that I'm in my 20s and, it will compound in the longer term? And then on the flip side, what kind of advice would you give to someone who, I guess, is further along in their career, for example, has kids, is now thinking about school fees and those kind of bills and responsibilities, but is also having similar questions with themselves about whether to invest in something more capital intensive and long-term like real estate versus the stock market?
Well, the earlier you can get on the property ladder, the better. It's just such a fantastic investment, especially if you qualify for a mortgage. If you do qualify for a mortgage, then it's not such a heavy burden. If you can get that down payment, then you can actually start to invest in property, especially for those of you in Nigeria or abroad. In Nigeria, the mortgage market is not as strong as it should be. So it's much more difficult. You need to be earning very significant sums before you're even considered for a mortgage. But in other countries, literally, once you've got a steady income, you can get on that property ladder. So that's a great thing to be able to do. So it's a matter of your goal. What is your own goal? Some people, I know people who just don't want to touch the stock market, and they've done brilliantly with property. So it's a matter of what you feel works for you. If you have to have an objective before you invest. What are you investing for? Your investment may be for school fees in 8 years, 10 years' time for your children. You want them to have this particular type of education. You know what the school fees is, and you want to start thinking about that play from now on. But the beauty of your youth is that you've got time. The fantastic thing about investing is time. So when you're young, it really is the best time. If you wait even to your 40s and 50s, you've missed a bit of the boat, because it's that compounding, whether it's in the dividends and capital appreciation or interest, that you really benefit from when you start investing from your first salary. But better late than never. Just the key, I have friends in their 60s, like I am, and they just haven't started investing, but they need to get started, because God willing, you have 30 more years of life. How on earth do you plan to fund that? You don't want to run out of money. So if you're young, please just get started. Just start right away. You've got to consider your debt, though. If you have a lot of debt, then it's difficult. You've got to focus first on reducing that debt to a manageable level before you can start to save and invest. But get started as quickly as you can. It's so practical. It is so real. It's not magic. It is real. People that start young have tremendous benefits in later life. and getting on the property ladder and having that passive income. It just gives you the freedom to do so many things. You can travel, you can do things, other things. You can start to invest in a business. You can invest in turn your passion to profit if you have funds. So it's a great thing to be able to do if you set your mind to it. It will take some sacrifice because many of your friends may be doing other things with their money, having a great time and going out clubbing and so on. And another person, I mean, I knew two young people who I used to mentor, and one just wanted to have a great time. The second one, by age 35, was on the second property.
Wow.
And the first was living from salary to salary, just because of that discipline. It does take some work on your personality.
I think that's really valuable as well, especially the last bit that you've said. None of us, I think, are born with the inclination or desire to necessarily say we all want to have fun and do
Yes,
things with our money. But as you say, kind of pushing yourself and
yes,
having
and
that discipline
the
to start
idea
off
is,
with.
yes, and the idea
a
is
saving.
get your money to work for you. I mean, it's just wonderful to get a rent check. Whenever I have passive income, I treat myself. So I it's like a bonus. You just got your rent, so your asset is working for you, and you got a bonus, or you got a dividend credit to your account. You can have some fun with that, but because your money is working for you as opposed to you working for that money. You've worked for it in the beginning to build that portfolio, but by the time the passive income starts coming in, it's wonderful because you're just sitting there and you're just getting income coming in, and that's where we all want to get to.
Fingers crossed, that is the hope. Yes, definitely. And one of the points you mentioned was actually about debt and kind of how to think about that, reducing that. And that's really helpful because in the book, you have a section about specifically conversations about debt and finances as it pertains to relationships. So again, I wanted to give you a few scenarios and just ask how you would advise kind of having those conversations. So the first scenario that I had was, how do you think people should discuss debt and finances at the beginning of a relationship? For example, let's say a few dates in, for example, between two people. Would you advise a few dates in? Would you advise even discussing finances at all at that stage? Similarly, yes, sorry.
No, well, I don't know about how many dates in, but you don't want to look like you're a gold digger or anything. So you don't want to ask what's your bank balance or what's your debt profile on date 3. But you do need to know. So when you know when the relationship is changing, it's getting serious. We know, you know.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
It's fair to say, if it's just a casual date, please don't ask anybody about how much do you earn and all that. They'll run. But at a certain point, you do need to start to talk about things when you see your relationship is going somewhere. What are your goals? What do you want to achieve in life? What sort of where do you want to live? What sort of, how far do you want to go with your education? Those sorts of questions. But more than the questions that you ask is observing. There are red flags. So if a person is driving a Mercedes or an expensive car and doesn't want you to come to their house because there's no road to the place, or they're embarrassed to, but they've got all this flash. It's a red flag. It's a red flag. I mean, you've got to dig in. You can see some questions. You can see the values. Those values, they show through very, very early. You're going out on a date, the person's salary is, what the person does. So you have a rough idea of what they're earning. And then they order 2 bottles of champagne to the table to impress you, or I'm not sure what. Those are things that make you sort of think, gosh, we may have a problem here. So those telltale signs, those, I mean, I know of someone who was so desperate to get married, and she met someone who was in the oil and gas. He said he was in the oil and gas industry, which he was. He was well dressed in a suit all the time and so on, and came to pick her up in a Land Cruiser. And she married him. She'd never been to to see where he lived or anything, but he turned out to be a driver in the oil company. She had thought he was an executive. She was looking forward to marrying an executive in the oil company, but he turned out to be one of the executive's drivers. And that was a bit of a shock for her family, because nothing wrong with her marrying the driver, but that was not her plan. She had thought he said he worked in HR in an oil company, and he did. And he went to the oil company every day, but he was not at the level that she had aspired for. And that was a real shocker to the whole family when they found out. He was just totally deceitful. Because nobody had, she was looking at all the fluff surrounding him, and not really, he would come in his boss's car, so she thought it was his car. So one has to be a little careful. There are a lot of scammers out there.
That's wow. And, also even with that, I think that's another thing that I really enjoyed about the book is I feel like for our audience who maybe haven't had a chance to pick it up, it's not just about how to save money and how to invest. You also go into a lot of detail about, I would call it how to be a good person. So you have, P on philanthropy and on giving back. I guess, again, why do you have those chapters, the self-worth versus net worth chapter as well? What do you think is the value of including those points, especially when we're talking about personal finance, and where does that come from?
Because I found that as a Nigerian, I just found I've traveled a fair bit, and I found that we are probably the most ostentatious, materialistic society I've ever come across. So that, and I think it's a huge problem, because people are trying to be what they can't afford. People are going bankrupt because they're trying to keep up with the Joneses, and the Joneses are completely broke. So everybody is busy following everyone else and trying to live in a part of the city that they cannot afford, driving a car they cannot afford, and just trying to keep up. And I thought it was something it's almost like we're equating our self-worth with our net worth. And that's something that has to be done to work out the whole value system. Is completely upside down. So that's why I had that chapter there, because I see that a lot. There was a lot of people, for example, young people feel they have to be on travel business class. They can't afford it. So there was once I was on economy. I go on business class if a company is paying for it. Otherwise, I can't use my money for a business class ticket. It just doesn't make sense. I hardly ever travel more than a 6-hour flight, and I just pay for the extra legroom. So I posted something about that. I showed I'm in economy, and I got hundreds of messages. People were in total shock. They had this idea that someone like me should not be seen dead in economy. And some of them said, oh, they were so inspired, and they've been spending all their money on business class because they felt that that's what they had to do at a particular position. And they were so happy to see that they didn't have to do this. Now, that's really sad. I also had 2 people on the flight who came to me in sympathy. Two people that were in first class who saw me in economy and were horrified. Now, one of them I knew was his company was going into receivership, and the other one, I also knew that a bank was about to repossess the family home, but they were in first class, and they were horrified on my behalf that I was in economy and I was going to watch Diana Ross. So I was just going on a nice frolic to watch Diana Ross. And the funds for the ticket came from dividends or something. Do you see what I mean? So you've just got, it's about priorities and knowing what you value, what's important to you, and not, because you have no idea what everyone else is going through or where they got their money from. It could be a bank paying for the ticket, or they're going for a board meeting. So if you now scrape the barrel to pay that just to keep up, you go bankrupt. If you try to keep up with the Joneses, you will go broke, because the Joneses are all broke. So it's so important for us to start to look at our own value system and not be looking over our shoulders at what everyone else is doing.
I think that's incredible advice. And honestly, I really appreciate you actually going even into detail into how that works in your own life with, flight tickets and how you consider that. I think there is, as you say, a lot of pressure societally, whether from
Yes,
groups,
pressure.
friendships.
Yes.
Yes, to feel like you have to maintain a certain status and image. And I think a lot of our audience will be hugely inspired to hear you say that for sure. So really, really appreciate that. I think I would be remiss not to talk even at all about your amazing and illustrious background and career. As we, Osaroma kind of said, you've had this incredible career in banking. You then started your own company. You also managed to somehow have the time for all these hobbies. I did a little stalk of your Instagram. And so I guess I wanted to kind of take it all the way back and just ask, what did you want to be when you were younger? Like if somebody had asked 5-10-year-old, what do you want to be when you're older? What would you have said?
And it came to nothing. It actually came to nothing at all. What they say, I was always saying I wanted to be I was obsessed with space travel. So I wanted to be but I didn't want to be an astronaut. I wanted to be a space hostess.
What does that mean?
You know how the air hostess serves you in the aircraft? So I wanted to be the person that serves in the spacecraft. It came to nothing, obviously, But no, I didn't sort of have any real idea of what I wanted to be until I had a fantastic economics teacher in secondary, and that made me sort of want to do economics, and that sort of led me into that banking path. But I didn't sort of have how people say I want to be a doctor and followed it through, and I didn't have anything like that. No, my father was a diplomat, so international relations was at our dinner table every day. But I never knew that I would eventually become a diplomat. But I developed a huge interest in international relations, loved it. And so I combined my degree with international relations and economics, which ended up being one of the interesting, not a requirement, but as a diplomat, it's a nice thing to have done as an ambassador. Yeah.
Okay. And the fact that you're an ambassador is incredible. And I definitely want to come on to that, but I want to follow kind of the chain. So you did, you had this great economics teacher, decided to go to university, obviously, and then started your career at Stanwick IBTC and ended up staying for, over 2 decades, which is, I just wanted to get your views because there's a lot of thought right now on, for example, job hopping every 2 to 3 years is the best way to.
I don't get it. Is it Gen Z? Gen
It
Alpha?
is Gen Z.
I don't understand it. I saw my niece recently. Oh, how's your job going? She said, oh, I want to leave, Auntie. How long have you been there for? I thought she was going to say 5 years. 2 years. So at my time, you got a good job. You were doing so many different things, worked in different departments, the mentorship, growth you got over the years made it worthwhile. But now I understand people just don't. In fact, you're made to feel like a dinosaur if you stay long. It's embarrassing almost, But I urge people to, if you really are happy in what you're doing and you're growing, don't buy with the pressure of everybody else to do that hopping. When I was interviewing people, if I saw that they kept moving, I thought they were unstable, but I know now it doesn't mean that. But that was a no for me. If I saw you did 2 years here, 18 months here, 3 here, your longest was 3.5 years. That made me just think, no, I wouldn't want to hire the person, but I see that's what happens now. But I do feel you should try to get as much experience as you can in a place. And if you're growing, don't leave because of pressure. If you feel you've learned everything and you need to go on to the next job, that's fine. But entrepreneurship is not for everyone. I always stress that because there's this idea that everyone's going to be an entrepreneur. No, some people are corporate people and need to stay there and build a fantastic career. And that's okay too. So I feel it's giving people a bit of a complex if they're staying for a while and they feel it's, everyone's moving on and you're being left behind almost. It's not that. So look at what you want to be doing and see if you're getting that in that company or you want to grow gradually. But I really believe there's something to do with staying for a while and learning and growing.
Mhm.
2 years to me still seems like a very short time, but I Gen Zs, I admire you all, but I'm still learning about how to become a Gen Z myself.
I was gonna say it's me and all my people in this conversation right now, me and all the Gen Zs. So, but I think that is helpful advice. I guess the points especially that you made about not looking around at what other people are doing, and it comes back to keeping up with the Joneses, but again, thinking what is right for me? Am I growing? Am I learning? You know, I guess my question for you on that bit would be, what would you say to people who say the job hopping is in order to make more money? Because I think coming back to the book as well, we're talking about personal finances. You need to save and try to
Yeah.
build up, you know, your emergency fund so that you can start investing and moving on to these next levels. So what if you are growing in a company, but you also know, for example, the next company is offering you a pay rise and that could help you long term? Like, what would you say?
You can't fault that. You can't fault that. Sometimes you've got financial objectives. This company can't pay you enough. This is still
Mhm,
an excellent company you're going to. They appreciate you. They're going to pay you what you need to be earning.
mhm.
No, I can't fault that. But
Okay.
don't just jump because you're bored or just try and do some time and get the benefit, especially if you've got bosses that are helping you, are really genuine and you can really grow and they can mentor you. There's so much value in those relationships. There really is. And whatever
Mhm,
you do, leave well, leave well. Many times people
mhm,
just leave and it's so distasteful.
mhm.
You want to leave, or in fact, even at that first interview, I always ask people, how long do you plan to stay? And they say two
Wow.
years, and I'm horrified, but at least if I want them enough, I know it's 2 years. That's fine. But don't suddenly
Mhm,
resign or suddenly leave the country, or that's just not on. It's happening too much. It's
mhm,
happening too much, and it does catch up with you because people, you want another job, and someone's going to ask for a reference, and
mhm,
you just don't look that great if you left badly. So leave whenever you want to, but leave well. Leave that connection so you can still come back and connect with your old colleagues and your old bosses, and it's a long cycle. So
mhm.
I'd say leave well.
That's really useful advice, especially because now you are obviously very much on the other side with entrepreneurship and the hiring. And that's actually the next thing that I want to come on to. We've touched on it a little bit in talking about your career, but how did you know that it was the right time to make the leap to doing, you know, Best Man Games and doing that? And why games? Like, why did you decide on that as well? Because that's also very cool.
Yes. Um, I had spent 21 years at Stanbic. I mean,
Mhm,
I was there from almost the beginning. It was IBTC, then IBTC Chartered, then I went to Stanbic IBTC. And I just wanted to move on, but I was
mhm,
not ready to be an entrepreneur, to get into my own business yet. I had the idea while I was still in Stanbic, but I wanted one more job.
mhm,
But I planned my exit properly. So I didn't just leave. I gave myself a year to
mhm,
be ready to leave. After you've been in a place that long, you do want that stability. So I wanted to make sure I'd done my savings and I was ready to
mhm,
leave. But I wanted one more job. I didn't want to jump into the next job that I was offered. I wanted to be
mhm,
able to pick and choose jobs. So I gave myself a 6-month period that I would be able to pay
mhm,
myself the same salary that the bank was paying me. So because what happens is people leave a job and then they're suddenly forced to go into another job and then they don't like it. So you
mhm,
often find people do one job for a while, go into another one and very quickly resign and move on. That happens a lot. So I was extremely
mhm,
intentional about the next job. A few offers came that I didn't want to take up, and then the Barclays job came and it was the perfect thing for me at that
yeah,
time. I was
mhm,
already thinking about Bestman Games, but I was not
mhm,
ready to leave that job. So I hired a consulting firm to do the business plan and set up everything.
mhm,
But after 2.5 years in Barclays, I felt ready to take on that CEO role with my own company. So
mhm,
I didn't just jump into it. I was
mhm.
intentional. So the company was set up by a consulting firm, so there was no conflict of interest at all. And so by the time I stepped in, I was more than ready, very, very excited. Why gaming? Because I was dealing with a lot of extremely wealthy clients as a banker. I did a lot of private wealth management. I was trying to prevent this, issue with wealthy families not being able to pass on wealth to their children properly. So we used to hold next gen seminars and bring in our clients' children into the banks, both in Stanbic and in Barclays, to talk about money and teach them about money. And Standard Bank had a board game called Winning Teams, which they sent to me. And I was using that for the children. And that was when I first thought, oh, I would love to have my own game, because that game was all in Rand and, it wasn't tailored to Nigeria.
Yeah.
I also grew up on board games. So we grew up playing Monopoly, Scrabble, chess, Racing Demon, card games, board games. So it was a natural thing. And then just absolute coincidence, my sons were in a school that launched its own Monopoly game.
Oh, wow.
And I had grown up on the British one, which was Mayfair, Parkley, and Old Kent.
Yeah.
In
Yeah.
fact, I saw a bus recently with Old Kent Road on it. I almost jumped on the bus because I've never known where it went to.
You've just seen it on the board.
On the board, yes. So I went to the company that set up the game. They have the rights from Hasbro. Hasbro owns Monopoly. So they have rights to do school editions, city editions, and nobody had done Africa. So it took another year to do the business plan and tell them that they had to do a Lagos edition. And eventually I got the rights to do for Monopoly games for the African continent. And the city of Lagos was the first ever African city edition of the Monopoly game. So that's where that came from. We used it as a tool. The Monopoly game teaches a lot about buying property, paying your taxes, going bankrupt.
Yeah.
So it's a great game for teaching about money matters. So it all tied in. Everything I've done has all tied in with teaching people about money. Yeah.
And I think that's incredible that there is a clear running thread through everything that you do. It's so clearly very intentional. And again, I feel like I've banged on about this, but that's also why I would reiterate to the audience to really pick up this book. Like, as you can hear from Mrs. Akinkugbe, she's incredibly thoughtful about her direction. And I think that's something we can and should all take away. So I wanted to ask you, we've chatted about career, and another pivotal point I think is when you were, ambassador to Greece. So I was going to ask, what is like your best anecdote from doing that? What's something that the audience would be like, wow, or we just never think of could happen in that job?
Oh, wow. That's an interesting question. Let me see. No, well, it was quite. There were very few female ambassadors. That was very unusual. I didn't expect that. Coming from the banking sector in Nigeria, we have a lot of female bankers in top positions. So as an African woman, there were just 2 sub-Saharan African ambassadors, just me and the South African ambassador in Greece.
Wow.
So that was quite unusual. And just unfortunately, our reputation as Nigerians has not been fantastic. So just being able to dramatically change the impression of Nigeria through the work we did was fantastic. So them seeing Nigerians, we brought in Nigeria, we had investment fora, we had a fashion show, we had a Nollywood film festival.
Amazing.
So just them seeing who Nigeria really was amazing. So the impression of Nigeria has changed forever. And it's just about how we have to carry ourselves, and people can see that Nigerians are truly extraordinary. So that was really amazing. And then also seeing the Greeks now. The Greeks have been in Nigeria for decades, since the 1930s, and they've been consistent. But just seeing new business coming into Nigeria from Greece because of that time is very exciting. So yeah,
That's amazing.
Amazing amazing opportunity, amazing honor to serve in that capacity. Some hilarious things happened though. Whenever I was with my husband, nobody believed I was the ambassador. So most societies are male dominated. So you'd walk into a place and they would just ignore me completely and say, Your Excellency to my husband. Or I'm sitting in the owner's, he always made me sit in the owner's corner. He said it was my role, so I would sit there. The doorman would come around to his side
Oh no.
to open the door for him. So that was quite funny. No matter what, we would always say, he'd say, look, she's the ambassador, but they just nobody believes it, you know.
Wherever you go, the patriarchy is there.
It's
So,
there. In a hotel room, even though the embassy had booked the hotel, that would get there, and when the TV comes in with the name, it would say Ambassador Yinka and Mrs.
Oh no.
Yes.
Oh wow.
So you were always sort of shoved aside, and they would assume that it's the male person that's the ambassador. Yeah, that was quite interesting.
Oh, well, I can imagine, but even more incredible the fact that it was you and that you paved that kind of path for, the rest of us coming behind for sure. So I want to give our audience a heads up that we will soon be taking questions from the audience. So I'm sure everyone has so many questions to ask. So please do feel free to pop them in the chat, and I will read them out. But while the audience is getting ready and doing that, Mr. Akinkugbe, I have a little game that I hope you think is fun. It's basically this or that. So I'm going to ask you to choose between two things, and you have to not think about it, just rapid fire off the top of your head. What is your answer? Are you ready?
I hope so, yes.
Okay. First one, books or TV?
I'm embarrassed to say TV.
That's fair enough. What's like something that you're enjoying right now or have enjoyed in the past TV-wise?
I can't even tell you. Yellowstone. Do you know Yellowstone?
I don't, but fair enough. I will look it up.
Look it up. Kevin Costner. If you're a Kevin Costner fan, go and watch Yellowstone.
Okay. Hot drinks or cold drinks?
Hot drinks.
Monopoly or Scrabble?
Monopoly.
Going out or staying in?
Staying in.
Fiction or nonfiction?
Fiction.
Sweet or savory?
Savory.
Early bird or night owl?
Early bird.
Be rich and famous or rich and unknown?
Rich and famous.
Breakfast or dinner?
Oh gosh, dinner.
And my last one, beach or a city break for a holiday?
Oh, let me see. Oh, that's difficult. I love both. Beach. Okay, beach. Beach is enough.
The beach. Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. I can see the chat function is filling up. So I'm going to start with our first question, which is actually a fun one. What are some of your finance hot takes?
So you cut off a bit. I didn't hear what you said. My finance, it's frozen.
She asked your finance hot takes.
Oh, sorry. Hot takes.
Like tips.
Can
you hear me?
hot takes. Yes, can hear you now. Can you hear me?
Okay, yes. So did you say hot, like tips, finance tips? Yes,
Hot
okay.
takes, like something that people wouldn't expect, like an interesting, view.
Oh, the Nigerian stock market. Nigerian stock market has been one of the best things I've ever done. So some people may not realize that. And if you're a Nigerian and you have access to that market, don't miss out. Some of the companies are doing really, really well. In spite of the devaluation and all that, it's a long-term play. And you should make sure you don't miss out on that market. So that would be one thing for sure.
That's an interesting. Okay, good. The second one is, what money mistakes would you recommend that people avoid?
spending on luxuries, when they really can't afford it. It's nice to let your passive income pay for those luxuries. So borrowing, some people borrow for holidays, borrow to buy jewelry, things like that, I think are huge mistakes. Be careful how you get into that. Another major money mistake is borrowing and not paying back. Disaster. A lot of people do that, and then suddenly you can't reach them on the phone. They lost your number, or in fact, a Nigerian one is their phone fell into a bucket of water, and they
Oh my gosh.
lost all the numbers. Don't do it, because everyone needs friend and family money at some point. That's free money. So if you burn all your bridges and you don't pay people back and you're dodging them and you go through the back door because the person that lent you money is coming up the stairs, just stop it. If you're having difficulty paying back, call the person and ask for more time. You will be amazed. Some people will write off the loan or give you a payment plan. But the biggest mistake you can make is become known to be a person that does not pay back. People will stop lending you money.
Yeah.
So it's a really bad mistake.
And as you say, we all at some point will need someone, so it's important to
You need that
maintain those
friend family
relationships.
money. You do need it.
Yeah.
So it just once in a while you just get a bridging loan, and it's usually interest free. So it gets around very fast. It changes relationships. But borrowing from friends and family, be careful of that as well, because it does spoil relationships as well. So you must do that with caution. Borrowing or giving. I find that if a family member needs money, I can't give them what they're asking for, but I can't lend them what they're asking for, but I'd rather just give a certain amount that I'm not expecting back. It's easier. Sometimes the dynamics of a relationship changes when money is involved.
Makes sense. A question that's come through that actually I need as well. What budgeting methods have you found to be the most effective?
I know that you have all the apps and so on, but I'm still old-fashioned. I just love my Excel budget. And if you go to the website, Money Matters with Nimi, there's a budget there, a fantastic budget template on Excel. It's got everything you can think of. And it just helps. Budgeting is such a fundamental way of managing your finances, because you'll be quite shocked at how much you're spending on particular areas. It's when you see it that it leaps out at you. Otherwise, you're just spending and you don't realize that you've actually spent half your income in a month, or almost all your income in a month, eating out, for example. So
Yeah.
it's nice to build in fun. I build in fun into my budget. So I must go out a particular number of times. So it's part of my budget. It's not like I'm breaking the bank to do something. I've planned to do that. So if you do that, if you're someone that needs to go to the spa, maybe you can't afford to go every month, but you can go once a quarter. Put it in the budget so it's part of it. And try it as far as possible to stick to your budget. December is a disaster. It doesn't work in December. I mean, my out the window in December, but I'm trying to rein it in January now and being a little bit more careful. And you find that when you track your expenses, maybe everyone on the call should try and do that, for the rest of the month or for February. Write down every single thing that you spend. You'll be shocked about where your money is going, down some black hole. If you literally write everything down, it's such a shock to see how much you've spent on some things that you just wouldn't ordinarily have done if you hadn't been tracking it. And it just helps you rein it in. And then that is additional money to put towards your saving or investing.
I think that's really helpful advice, and I definitely will be writing this all down. I think I will be frightened to see where my money is going, but it's good advice for sure. And then the last one from our audience is someone's asked, what is your advice to people in their 20s who aren't clear on their long-term goals?
You just be the best you can be for the time being, and try to recognize what makes you really happy. be a bit conscious of why you're feeling good about a particular job. What did you like about it? What areas of it? What things do you hate? What things do you love? Start to be a bit mindful about the things. You don't need to know everything in your 20s. Had no clue, but you can start to see that, oh, I'm good at this. There are some things that you're naturally good at and people are praising you for. You inevitably find that those things that come naturally to you and you like doing them. And you suddenly find that you're very good at it. People are asking you about it. And that could be an area. I really believe that every one of us has a God-given talent. And if only we could identify it and pursue it, it really could be a passion to profit type situation. So be very conscious of your hobbies and your passions. To me, that is the natural direction to sort of look at what you're doing that you love. Do what you love what you do. It doesn't always pay the bills, but sometimes it's worth going with what your instinct tells you. My children, one of my son, he's a musician. He's a lawyer, but the law degree he did was IP law. So he's now, to my horror, I'm a Niger mom. So to my horror, this lawyer has resigned from his law job in a top New York law firm, and he's a full-time rapper. But he has an IP law degree under his belt.
Oh.
He's doing all his contracts. So he knows the business of music. Do you see? So
yeah,
then pursue your passion, but with wisdom as well. So. But I really believe that one should do what you love if you can, and if it can pay the bills, then go for it. I'm getting used to the idea. I like to say my son is a lawyer. If you say my son is a rapper, I sort of say, okay.
I'm going to take this as you giving me the green light to leave my law job and pursue my passions now. My parents are on this Zoom and they're going to be like, no.
Oh no.
Thank you so much, Ms. Akinkugbe. Honestly, this has been a fantastic conversation and I've really enjoyed speaking to you, and I know our audience has really enjoyed hearing from you. I'm going to hand over to Mrs. Kalango just to kind of give her remarks, but thank you so much again.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I've enjoyed spending the evening with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Hello, Nimi. Thank you so much. Here's my copy of A to Z of personal finance, and I can't wait to get it autographed by you. Thank you for writing this book. It's for someone like me to say I enjoyed reading a book on finance. I think it tells a lot about the book. It's so easy to follow. I could have titled it Personal Finance for an Idiot, because I think I know nothing about these sorts of things, or just common sense, for personal finance, common sense. I enjoyed it. I wish I hadn't read it so fast. I wish I had taken my time, but I have underlined sentences, I've made comments, so I think you have a new follower in me. Well done.
Fantastic.
And I
that's wonderful. I'm so pleased about that because I wrote it 9 years ago and it seems to be quite timeless. So it's great that it's still relevant and so on. Yeah.
It is. And I learned new things like the difference between a trust and a will, the difference between charity and philanthropy. So much. And I particularly found one of the chapters on talent very interesting. And I think it would answer to one of the questions I saw someone ask, and in this time of financial hardship where economies around the world
look at your talent and what you can do to earn from that. Absolutely. Especially with technology, people are doing so much online and getting paid for it. So it's remarkable what you've got the world as your market now. you know.
Exactly. And to me, it's a book that touches on values, character, relationship, and all that. I wish I can ask, oh, do I have a minute for just one question? I don't think so, because we always like to end at 7 on the dot. I was going to ask you, because you've had experience in corporate life in the bank, and then as an entrepreneur, and then as an ambassador, so the public sector. And if you can tell me in a minute, which you enjoyed the most?
The most fulfilling, the ambassadorial role I found was a perfect fit for me, but I'm also scarred for life because it was in the Nigerian public service. So that's very, very different from the private sector. So there's a downside to that is something that I will talk about someday.
Okay, I was going to ask again, what book are you going to be writing next? Would it be your experience, for instance, as an ambassador?
No, I've got other books that I want to write about, first before that, but yes, I will write about that at some point. But it was the best part of my career has been that, but it was also a very challenging part as well. Yes.
I can imagine. Thank you so much. I'm going to hand over to Osarome to just close our meeting. Thank you so much for making the time to be with us. We appreciate it.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you.
And well done, Dabi. Well done.
Thanks, Dabi.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Dabi, and thank you, Mrs. Akinkugbe, for your time and such an interesting and insightful conversation. I also started keeping receipts a few years ago of some of my expenses, and I was alarmed when I started.
It's amazing what it does. Yes.
The
Gosh.
number of things I was spending on. So that was, so when you said that, tracking expenses, very true, very true. All right. Thank you everyone for joining. We will be back next month with another equally interesting session with donation and updates across the social media platforms. So if you're not following Rainbow Book Club, make sure you do that. If you look on your screen now, you would see on the Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram, as well as X. I was going to say Twitter, but it's now X. All right, so you could follow the Rainbow Book Club on those platforms. And make sure, if you found this really insightful, make sure you invite someone the next time or share the link with a friend or family member. And this recording or this particular conversation will be available on YouTube at the Rainbow Book Club. So make sure you share this if you feel like somebody else also needed to learn what you learned from this incredible conversation we had today with Mrs. Akinkugbe. Thank you so much to everyone also on the back end who's made this possible, the entire team at the Rainbow Book Club. Till we meet again next month for another edition of Talking Books Africa. Here's goodbye from us over here. Wishing you a wonderful week ahead and enjoy the rest of your weekend. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.